Welcome to episode 9, Rogue Bogues, my journey. It has been a long time between drinks. Please forgive me. I have 2 young kids in the house. I do the weekly basketball show, and it's very hard to have a quiet home to get one of these out. And I've had a lot of other things going on. Hospital visits, no surgery to look like my good self, and for my second phase of my career in some sort of modeling. But you are here to listen to my journey, so I won't bore you with all those excuses. Let's get rolling. Last episode, episode 8, we finished with my rookie year in the NBA and how that all went about. We now transition to 2006, and we are now preparing, or I am now preparing for my first NBA offseason. So the season for us finished relatively early, first round exit in the playoffs in 2005. We then, I then go back to Australia as soon as I could. I didn't hang around. Literally after we lost, I believe it was game 5, flew back from Detroit to Milwaukee. Next day, did all my physicals, exit meetings, all that. The very next day, I was on a flight to Australia. So that's how quickly it happens in the NBA. A lot of my teammates had flights the very next day. We landed from Detroit at 1 and 2 in the morning. That morning, they usually schedule the next morning after your last game, whenever that may be. You schedule the following morning immediately, starting at like 7 a.m., exit physicals, exit meetings with the GM and the coach. And then some guys flew out that afternoon. So I waited 2 full days, which is pretty rare in the NBA, but flew back to Australia. I wanted to get home. I was homesick. Wanted to spend some time back in Melbourne and Australia around family. So jumped straight on a jet. I had about maybe a month or so off where I didn't do much basketball, just kind of cleared the head, went and got some warm weather up north I believe I went to Port Douglas, first time I ever went to northern Queensland, had a holiday up there. That was all good fun. And then it was time to prepare for the 2006 World Championships, which were in Japan. I also had my trainer, who we're going to call Steve, with me now for most off seasons. The bulk of his role was in the off season, so we would do our own workouts, individual workouts. If it wasn't part of a national team camp, for instance, we only had 2 or 3 World Championship camps leading up to the World Championship. So between that time, between camps, we would work out, we would lift weights, we would go find recovery, we would do extra conditioning, whatever it was. And he kind of oversaw my program, and that's what we kind of did. Every now and then we get a few other bodies in, some kids from college and whatnot, and go and have a few people to play, 2-on-2 with or 1-on-1 with. But for the most part, it was individual sessions, a lot of work. He was big on hours on the court. At that point, it was tour days, I believe, in the off season. So morning and night. Morning was more weights, conditioning, ball handling, kind of high heart rate type sessions where just a lot of running and ball handling and conditioning mixed in with basketball and your weights. And then the afternoon was usually bulk shooting. It was pure European style format for off-season development and training. So they were pretty tough. And then obviously going, into a World Championships, Brian Gorgon was the coach at the time. I still remember the training camps. They were notorious for being tough. We had 3 or 4 camps leading into that World Championships. And before I get to the World Championships, during that NBA season, I had my parents scope out I was looking for a warehouse to put a basketball court in. So when I was home in the 2005 off season, even the 2006 off season, I came into a little problem with just getting access to basketball courts in Australia. So I knew I was going to spend my off seasons in Australia. Whenever I could get out of the US for the off season, it would be in Australia, and I'd come home and try to work out. And the problem in Australia is that you might have a gym that you go to every day, a basketball court, and the night before a school might call and say, hey, we need to book out your whole facility for the day. Or, some randoms, 4 people want to book it out for badminton, and they're going to rent the whole court out more times than not. And looking back, we probably should have tried to just book it out and just pay up front, but they couldn't really do that, and they'd always book out to bulk schools because they'd make more money. But probably should have got the checkbook out and just, booked out a whole number of days that were just ours. But anyhow, that started to frustrate me because some days you'd show up for practice every day is 10 a.m. and you show up and, oh, sorry, you're into the court out. So I started getting a little frustrated with that. Then a lot of courts, say you found a court that didn't have a weight room, so then we'd have to drive either before to a different weight room, then get in the car, drive to another court, which is 30 minutes away. First world problems, but not the routine I was used to in the NBA. Everything's in-house, right? And then third was recovery, pool, that kind of stuff, then going to a leisure center or something to do all that. So it was like, in a big city like Melbourne, these places were all 20, 30 minutes away from each other. You end up having what should be a 3 or 4 hour day turns into basically what would it be, 6 hours with travel. So yeah, it just ended up being something that I wasn't keen on continuing to do. So I ended up telling my parents during that season, hey, look for a warehouse that can fit a court. So we were flying blind with everything. My dad had to get the measurements, and the warehouse was just big enough to put a full-size court. I think we lost a couple of centimeters because of the walls, because I did this thing properly, man. I did everything from, I flew baskets out from the US, like actual baskets that we had in our arena. I got our equipment manager to source me 2 of those brand new. I'm talking the whole thing, like, the support, the stanchion, the metal arm that comes out, the backboard, the rim, the net, everything. I wanted everything the same as an NBA facility. So I did all that, flew all that out. That was a tricky project within itself, just because these things weigh a lot, and getting them on a ship, getting them off a ship, getting them on a truck, did all that. So we started that process in the off season of 2006. We started to basically get that facility ready to be a facility. So I decided to extend the office. It had a little tiny office coming off the warehouse. I think of a square warehouse, had a little tiny office coming up. I knocked that all down, extended that into a massive kind of another square room off it. Put a pool in at the bottom, hot tub, cold tub, steam room. Up on stairs on top of that, I put a lounge, had a TV in it, had showers, and a washing laundry, a couple of washing machines and dryers, just for, my plan was to make this an NBA type facility. So one-stop shop, I can show up wearing a suit and tie, get there, get changed, everything I need is there, right? That was the plan from the start. So it was doing all that. It was putting in a court. My father helped with that. We put in a state-of-the-art court that was actually packed, meaning that it was 15, 20 centimeters, probably not that much actually, probably about 10 centimeters off the concrete. So they pack it a little bit, so the wood has a little bit of flexibility in it. Fantastic for your joints, your back. And I knew I'd be spending a lot of time on that court. So, the way some basketball stadiums go is, if you ever get very, very sore after playing at a basketball stadium, chances are they've laid the wood straight onto concrete, and you'll feel every part of that in your joints and knees and hips and back. So I wanted to make sure this was state of the art, so much so that the leveling of the concrete costs us as much as laying the floor down, if that makes sense. So these fellas come in with a laser cutting machine, and they got basically every portion of that big warehouse within a couple of millimeters, which is commendable. That's very, very hard to do, because if you've got ups and downs on your floor, or one part drops, your wood's going to drop or raise in those areas. So I spent a shitload of money just on the court, and then we put all our weight training equipment down the side of the court, because it was a bit wider than a normal court. So we had all our squat racks and weights all down there, and like I said, everything one-stop shop, right? And I remember we got the court put in pretty quickly, but the extension for the pool, I put some windows in, so there was some natural light. All that was happening while the court was already done. So I was actually training in Melbourne winter, in this place with no windows that weren't. I remember there was no windows on there. It was 11 degrees outside, but the court was there, where the baskets were all there. It was gated, so no one could go in and steal stuff. But my trainer was like, "No, we're going in there training. Just wear your tracksuit pants and your hoodie or your jumper, and we're going to work." And I remember that. I had a little chuckle about that, and I just remember thinking, I can't wait till next season when this is all done. And then by next season, it was pretty much, the bones of it were all done. But to be honest, it took me 3 or 4 years to slowly do different things to it. I ended up adding more baskets. I ended up adding a curtain that separated the courts. So that's just a little detail on the facility I built and why I built it. It just made sense, and it was great because I'd have physios come and visit me instead of going to their clinic. I'd pay them to come out to see me. They'd do my physio. I'd go straight onto the court, and do my recovery. I'd have masseuses come there. It was just perfect for me where I could go somewhere, lock the gate, lock the door, and go to work, and nobody could kind of bother me in the middle of my session. I had a real issue, and some people have actually commented to me on this topic on social media. When I was working out at these public facilities, I was big on no distractions during training, meaning that I wanted to go in and get my work done, right? Now, a lot of people out in the public, they don't understand time and place. I've had this discussion before, and I'd be in the middle of a training session sometimes, sweating, getting through a drill, sweating, getting through a drill, need to make 3 more to end the drill, whatever, and a mum would walk on the court with their pram and ask for an autograph, or an adult would force their kid in the middle of the workout and you almost trample them, and it did frustrate me, and I'd ever rarely get mad at the kid. I'd really have a crack at the adult and be like, look, I've got no problem taking a photo. I've got no problem signing an autograph. Just please let me finish my session. And yeah, that was not something that people took lightly. They thought that it was me being arrogant, me being an asshole. And it's just one of those things you have to deal with, that I had to put my foot down because I want whatever my amount of work is that I need to do it. So that frustrated me going to public facilities because people thought that I owed them something. Like a lot of people thought that, he's just here shooting hoops. If I interrupt for a minute, what's a big deal? And all of a sudden you have 2 or 3 people do that a session. My trainer started to get angry at it as well and getting mad at people. So that was part of the mindset of building my own place where I could just go in. I remember going in there sometimes at 10 o'clock at night and clearing my head and getting shots up or getting a workout in or getting some recovery in. Especially with the injuries I had late in my career, I had a key to the door 24/7 and it was mine. And no one could say I couldn't go in there. So that was the mindset. I invested a lot of money in that. It probably, if we're being honest, it probably cost me, with the building and everything I did, close to $2 million. Obviously I can afford it, most people say, but that was an investment I made into myself. I made that investment. And if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't be playing 14, 15 years professionally, right? With the amount of injuries I had, it was a godsend looking back and really served a great purpose. So that started in that off season. So we end up going off to the World Championships. So we have our camps here. Pre the World Championships, we play New Zealand in a 4-game series. Now that's the genius of Basketball Australia and Basketball New Zealand, is they somehow formulated a 4-game series. Now anyone that's great or even not great at maths can probably figure out 4 doesn't fit well if it's 2-2. And you'd be correct. The series finished 2-2, and then it went on percentage, and New Zealand won the series based on percentage. Just horrendous. Make it 3, make it 5, make it 7. 4, 6, 8 just does not work. But anyway, we won one in New Zealand, lost one, then we won one in Melbourne, and then lost the 4th game. And I remember it was a close game towards the end, and they banged 2 or 3 threes late, trying to get the lead up, and they beat us. And it was 2-2, and the games didn't mean anything. They were just a warm-up friendly, but I remember it was just really annoying because I was like, there should be a game 5. We should play for all the marbles, but that's just the way it worked out. That was our preparation going to the World Cup. We then go over to China. My first ever visit to beautiful China and experiencing the pristine air they have over there and all the fun things that come along with that. And we play in, I think, the Boris Stankovic Cup out there, playing a tournament. I think we finished second in that one. Or it might have been the Diamond Ball, actually. It might have been the Diamond Ball tournament. And we played in that one. And that was the warm-up basically for the World Cup. The World Cup then was in Japan. The way I equate Japan coming from China was coming from a really poor suburb to the Bel Air of your area. It was going from China to Japan. It was like so close in region, yet completely different. It was actually amazing. I remember the China tour, which was we were there for about 15 days, and like you can't, they tell you not to brush your teeth with the water, use bottled water, Don't eat anything that's washed underwater. So bye-bye vegetables for the most part, lettuce, all that kind of stuff. Fruit that's washed underwater, it's pretty full on because we've had guys turn green on tours before and get very, very ill because the water alone has more bacteria than it does, in Australia or America, and you got to get used. A lot of people that live there are used to it. We're not, us spoiled Westerners. So that was an adjustment. But I remember China real well because there was a big push for a lot of players and coaches, and Brian Gorgian especially. There was a big craze around. You could buy prestige watches that were fake knockoffs, but they looked the money, right? The problem was they stopped working after a couple of months, or a hand would fall off, or as Brian Gorgian mentioned on the In Conversation episode we had with him a few weeks ago, he was rebounding and the glass face just fell off and hit the floor. That's the problem. But some of these watches, man, you wouldn't even know the difference. And I've got some nice luxurious watches, and I saw these fake ones. I was like, wow, it looks very, very similar to what I have. Like you have to know what you're looking for to spot the difference, be kind of a somewhat expert in the field. But anyways, that was a fun part of the tour, non-basketball wise. And then the other one was, it was my foray into poker, thanks to Aaron Bruce. So I had a PlayStation Portable. I bought that my rookie year in the NBA. I bought pretty much every game you could get with it. And I had World Series of Poker, but I just never played it. Small note, I hated watching poker on TV. Like I thought, whenever I'd see it on ESPN, I'd see poker. I'd be like, how the hell is this a sport? This is bullshit. Why is this on TV? It's boring. Blah, 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 blah. So Aaron Bruce and I got talking. He played at Baylor University in Texas. Yeah, so he obviously was familiar with Texas Hold'em because you got to know how to play that while you're living in Texas, no matter what is going on. And he goes, have you ever played it? I go, nah, I have no idea I know basic poker hands, but I don't know how to play Texas Hold'em. I knew 5-card draw to an extent, but I wasn't, familiar with betting and all that kind of stuff. He goes, nah, once you get the hang of it, you'll love it. So he just taught me Texas Hold'em, just the intricacies of small blind, big blind, the river, the turn, the flop. If you don't know, the flop, the turn, the river. If you don't know what that is, you just Google it. The flop is first 3 cards, and the turn is the 4th card. The river is the 5th card, 5th and last card, and then you got the blinds that you have to put in, small blind, big blind. Who's got the dealer button? He didn't teach me the detail of position and betting and how the strategy works because I was literally a beginner. So he just taught me the basics of how to play. So I started playing it on my PSP and got hooked. And that basically, for those that know me and follow me, know that I love to play some poker. And he was the guy that I have to credit with teaching me. And Aaron Bruce was with me in the AS as well. So we had a pretty good friendship. And he taught me how to play Texas Hold'em poker. And now I play pot limit. Texas Hold'em and pot limit are my favorite too. Probably pot limit's trumped it by one. But that's where that started. So it wasn't all about basketball. I learned some new things there on that tour, which was cool. And that was because we were on trains, planes, automobiles, buses, whatever, you name it, we were on it, traveling all over China, playing different games leading into Japan. But we get to Japan and look, we took a team over with a lot of first-time boomers and probably a few last-time boomers, right? So guys, that was probably the only time they played for the boomers. A young, inexperienced team, not a whole lot of talent on the world stage, kind of went behind the ears, including myself. I'd only been to one Olympics, so not a lot of experience internationally for me. And look, we just didn't have a team that was what we see today with the Boomers, where you're, hey, we're a top 4 team, like we're competing for a medal. For us, it was like, hey, let's try to get to at least the quarterfinals, and whatever happens beyond that is a win, right? That was Australian basketball in 2006. It was what it was. 2000 Olympics in Sydney, if everyone remembers, all the big names retired. They were very, very old. A lot of those big names, now this is an argument that you can have, is sometimes when a lot of stars play till their dying days, it then can hinder the young junior development, because the young guys never really get an opportunity to be in the fray. And we kind of saw that to an extent, and that's not discrediting all the legends that have played for the Boomers. This goes for NBA clubs, NBL clubs, national teams especially. Is you want to honor your legends by letting them retire on their own terms, but at the same time, it's your program's job to look to the future of like, hang on a second, if these guys all retire tomorrow, what do we have back there? The unfortunate answer was we didn't have much. We had a lot of NBL players. Still some decent players. Shane Heal played in 04 and then retired. Matty Nielsen was still floating around. Jason Smith. but we just didn't have enough of that young oomph to really carry it for the next 10 years. So that was always something I thought about. If I was ever involved in BA, I would, there has to be a precedent for the coach, and this is tough, precedent for the coach to look not only to win the tournament, but for the future. And the unfortunate reality is coaches are hired on a 2-year deal or a 4-year deal, or all right, you've got 2 Olympics, that's your deal, 8 years. But you somewhat need to have KPIs around that where development, winning trumps everything. You want to win a medal, but there needs to be some eye on, I think it's probably 30, 70, 25%, 75%, 25% being an eye to development. The other 75 is winning. Whenever you go 100% all costs winning with a national team program, you're going to have mountains that you're at the top of, and then you're going to have cliffs that you fall off. The good national teams that generally have longevity and sustained competitive results, tournament after tournament. You look at Serbia, former Yugoslavia. You look at Argentina. Some of these countries, they're very, very good at that. And they do have legends playing on, but it's not like you take Luis Scola of Argentina, for example. He's played with 2 or 3 different generations of Argentinians, but that whole team's not stacked with 30, 40-year-olds, right? They have a good balance there. So, and they continue to be competitive. But that's just an example that I had and made me think of this World Championships, because we had a lot of guys that were, no disrespect to them, we had a lot of guys that were just, still wet behind the ears, like myself. We just hadn't played a lot of basketball together, and we're a new team. So anyhow, we beat Brazil to open, which was a big win for us. Brazil were pretty decent. They had Anderson Varejao. I don't know if my former teammate Barbosa was in that one. I can't remember, but they had a solid team, and they were a pretty dominant force from their part of the world. So that was a great. Whenever you can open up any international tournament with a win, it's a win. You take it, you get on with it. Remember, it was an emotional win because we knew it's probably us or Brazil going to the next round out of this pool. So whoever wins that opening game most likely will get through. So we beat them to open. Then we played Turkey in a close game, the second game. And they beat us. They were a tough team. It was really, really close to the end. It had a teammate of mine, Osana Ilyasova, with the Milwaukee Bucks on it, and I remember I was pissed losing to him, but they beat us. They were tough, and they're another example of a team that's pretty consistently decent. They don't have massive drop-offs. Game 3, Greece. Now, this game, for people who have followed the Boomers for a long time, was one that really, really hurt. We played a fantastic game for 38 minutes, 39 minutes of the game. We battled them. We had counters for everything they were doing. We were great defensively. We looked after the ball. And then we get to about the final, I think it was the final 40 seconds, 45 seconds. We're up 6. And we don't get a good shot. I think we turn a baseline out of bounds over. And they score, I think it was a 2. So they cut it to 4. Then we inbounded, I think it was to David Barlow, the next possession, I'm not sure, and he ended up turning it over mid-court. I think they come down, bang a 3 with about 30-odd seconds left. They hit the 3, and then we're up 1. We get it in again. I can't remember if we turned it over again. I think we did, or we took a bad shot, which gave them enough time, and literally they ran it back at us and hit another 3 basically on the buzzer to beat us. And we had no excuses losing that game. We should win that game 99 times out of 100, and they stole it from us and showed us what a good European team does. They don't panic, and they gave themselves a shot to win it, and they put pressure on us, and they beat us. And that really set up our tournament after that, because now we had we had Lithuania coming up, who were one of the tournament favorites at the time. They were a very, very tough team, very well drilled, been together for a long time. They smacked us to a pulp, and we had to win that game, knowing that if we didn't win that game, we're probably going to get the last position in our pool. So it'd be Turkey, Greece, Lithuania. We get that 4th spot, Brazil 5. Qatar was 6th. We knew we had to avoid 4 because we're crossing over with Team USA's pool, and they would be most likely number 1. So anyway, Lithuania smacks us. We're like, shit, we're pretty much in 4th. Qatar was a formality. We beat them. They weren't very, very good. I think it was Qatar. It might have been Jordan or Qatar, one of those teams from the Arab Emirates. But beat them pretty easily. Formality. We get 4th place, and we cross over to Team USA. So just an example of how important these tournaments it is to come out, start well, and you got to kind of look forward to an extent. We do now much more because we know, in 2021, 2024 Olympics, 2023 World Champs. We kind of know we're going to be in the mix somewhere for a medal with the squad that we have. So you got to kind of look ahead and know who you're crossing over with and what kind of positions to avoid. Now, you don't want to avoid anyone, but you'd rather play Team USA later in the tournament for a medal than playing them in a quarters or a semi where they have a chance of knocking you out completely. So teams will throw games. Now, this is very controversial and it happened later on, and maybe I'll talk about that when we get to that era. But we had a tournament where we played the percentages and we lost to an Angola team, so we would drop down and not face USA because I think they finished second in their pool. We dropped down to fourth on purpose or something along those lines, and it was a shitstorm in Australia. People were like, "How could you do that? You represent your country." Let me give everyone a tip out there. Do I condone it? I don't condone losing, but I understand the strategy around better placing yourself to win a medal, and that was what had to be done, and I'm fine with it down that mindset. Every European team and Asian team in the world would do the same and has done the same in numerous tournaments I've been to. In Australia, we're a little bit precious about, you're wearing the green and gold, you got to... No. I want to win a medal. If that means that we have to kind of pump the brakes a little bit in a certain game and make it look like a professional loss, that's the unfortunate reality and rules of these tournaments. And they've now changed that to the best of their ability in FIBA to stop that from happening. I commend them for that. But we were the only country in the world not doing it for decades upon decades. And it hurt us at times. And every European team presented that chance would take it. They'd start their bench, not play their stars. Oh, we lost, oops, we fell down a third and now we don't have the USA in a crossover. But our media here in Australia really smacked that program for that and the coaches involved, which I thought was unfair because we're kind of sheltered here. That cricket mentality of don the green and gold and the baggy green. I understand when you look at it from afar, if you don't know basketball, they lost the game on purpose. What? But once you know the history of these international basketball tournaments and Olympics, it makes much more sense. And I've had everything from 2003 World Junior Championships. We beat Croatia in the semifinals. So we're automatically into the final of the World Championships, the World Junior Championships in 2019. And we are then watching Greece versus Lithuania. They played the second semi. So we stayed after our game to watch that to see who we're playing the next 2 days later in the final. In Greece, of all places. So Greece were actually favourites, home team, tournament favourites on their own soil. And Lithuania were very, very good. Very, very good team. Linus Kleiser and a few other stars on that team. So watching their game, and it was a close game. Lithuania goes on like a 7-0 run. Guess what? Someone from the Greek bench drops a massive bucket of water in front of their bench on the floor while they're on a 7-0 run. While Lithuania's on a 7-0 run. They had no timeouts left or didn't want to burn a timeout. Water goes over the floor. They have to stop the game. Takes them 2 or 3, 4, 5 minutes to mop it all up, make sure the court's good and safe. Game starts again. Greece climb back into it. Lithuania, 6-0 run. Bang. Water ends up on the floor. Now, I'm not saying it's right what they're doing, but it's clear as day what they're doing. They're trying to get themselves a win, and they're doing anything possible until they're told, you do that again, you're getting a technical foul or stop, blah, blah, blah. That's a prime example. And that's what we're dealing with these international tournaments. And I don't condone losing on purpose and throwing games, but I do condone better suiting yourself to get yourself in a better position down the end of a tournament rather than, arguably you beat Angola in that game, you get the US, you're out, you're gone. But we didn't get the US. We ended up losing to Turkey anyway, I think it was, in a very, very close game on the buzzer, mind you. But we gave ourselves a better shot to get to the semis, and I will take that over a game that didn't matter against Angola in the pool phases. So that's just a small tidbit around that. So we end up going and playing the USA. We end up now moving cities. We go from a small Japanese city, I can't even remember where we were, to Tokyo. The US is only ever based in big cities in these world championships for obvious reasons. They sell out arenas. And they punched us. They beat us by 40. We battled for the most part. I think it was a close game, first quarter. And then towards the end of the half, they got a nice lead, and then they blew us out in the third and fourth quarter. But I remember those teams. Those USA teams were tough because they used to just pressure full court. It's changed a little bit now, but they used to at times we couldn't get the ball over half court. I had to bring the ball up. Some of our guards couldn't really get it over at times just because of the pressure defense. But like I said, we battled. We had a lot of first-time boomers on that team, and you can't ask for more than trying to battle, and that's what we did. But one other small thing I forgot to mention. So in Japan, fireworks unfortunately were illegal at the time. You could buy them from like a newsagent, bottle rockets and little small bungers and stuff like that. And our group, at least myself, Stevie, Aaron Bruce, I think I'm not sure if Alex Marriage was on that team. I don't think he was. I think he was in later on. But we all went with the AS together. That's all. We used to go down to Canberra to Fish Week and buy fireworks, and it was the best thing ever. Like, we'd let them off for New Year's and have fun with them or whatever. You know, kids being kids, right? I was still a kid at 20, 21 years old. Like, I was still doing stupid stuff and like to have fun and do pranks and all that kind of stuff. So we went and bought some fireworks and all that. And I remember we were, sitting near a pedestrian crossing. We'd throw them on the crossing when people were crossing the road. Just being idiots, doing stupid stuff. In Japan, of all places. So those who've been to Japan, it's a prim and proper place. Like, it's everyone's kind of straight laced and up straight, nicely dressed, tie straightened. That's just kind of their society. Everything's very orderly. So you got these Aussies being absolute idiots, which we were. But we had some bottle rockets. So my genius idea was, I was just bored one night. I think it was the night before a game, and the way it works is when your team's on in a hotel room, you're all on the same floor. Everyone kind of leaves their doors open, or they put the latch so the door doesn't lock, because guys go in different rooms and hang out with different guys. So I went to Aaron Bruce's room and saw he was just hanging there by himself. So I don't think he saw me. I go into his bathroom, and he hears me going to his bathroom, had a bottle rocket, lit it, put it in the rubbish bin of his bathroom, and that thing, that was a mistake. The thing went off, the loud whistle from fireworks. It just kept going, bang, 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 bang. He's like losing his shit. You idiot, what are you doing? So I ran back to my room, and I'm sitting in my room. I think Aaron Bruce came back to my room with me, and hear a knock on the door. I look through the peephole. There's the whole fire squad from their local fire stations on our floor. The guy had an axe in his hand, had all the packs on, and like we didn't answer the door, and they ended up leaving. And then the team manager saw her, and he's like, "I know it was you. I know you did that shit. Why are you doing that shit?" But yeah, man, a small example of the dumb shit we used to do on tour, or I used to do at least. I can't blame anyone else, because I used to do a lot of stupid stuff, and I guess that's the upbringing. For those of you who have listened to all of these, my journeys, always towing the line of getting in trouble and doing stuff that's a bit silly. So that almost got me in a bit of trouble, especially being one of the star players. You don't usually get that in those tournaments. But small tidbits anyway. End up getting knocked out of that tournament. Oh, how about this? So then triggered my memory. We go and party that night. It was our last night. We go and have some drinks in Tokyo, and the Team USA rolls in. We're like, these dudes are still in the tournament and they're out partying, which was what it was, whatever. So I'm not going to name who it was. Someone on our team decided to do something silly with a cigarette lighter around people's hair. And I don't know why he thought that was funny, but that's what he was doing after he had a few drinks. And I guess security had caught wind of it and had come to throw my teammate out. So saw a bit of a kerfuffle. I went over and said, "What's going on?" And my teammate's like, "Oh, he's trying to kick me out. And I'm like, "What'd you do? Was it because you were doing what we all told you to stop doing earlier?" Like, yeah, no, blah, blah, blah. And it was a little Japanese fella at the club. He's like, you need to leave. And we're just like, well, I said, he won't do it again. He's with me. Apologize. Really sorry. No, you can't do that here, blah, blah, blah. And then because he was a little dude, like just him by himself, we're like, man, just leave us alone, man. Like, so we basically just said, just go away. And then within a second, turned around and there was like 3 bodybuilding type dudes that were just like, hey, time to leave, guys. So then I'm like, pissed at my teammate because we all told him not to do that. And I'm like, I'm not leaving. Like, you can go, dude. Like, it's your fault for just get a cab back to the hotel. And the security was like, no, all you guys are leaving. That's enough. Like, we're done with you guys. Get out. So the Team USA guys saw this. So then one of these dudes, I don't know who it was, leaked it to the media, and I'm in the off season, away from my NBA club, and it's on Hoops Hype, and it was made out like I did something. It didn't blow up really in Australia. No one really gave a shit about basketball back then, thankfully, but it didn't blow up in Australia, but it blew up over there a little bit. And my team was calling like, "What are you doing?" This, that. I'm just like, man, like I had to explain that I was sticking up for a teammate. Then I got caught, guilty by association, and they just booted us out. So that was pretty funny. Those kind of silly things you do, but I just remember like from a whole PR point of view and having my team now find out, because look, my team Milwaukee Bucks weren't too fond of me going to play for the national team just because, I was number one pick at that time, making a lot of money. And even when I signed my extension, it's like, well, we're paying you a lot of money to be good for us, not for your national team who's not paying you. So you understood that. And then on top of that, I'm getting in trouble and things are going wrong. So that wrapped up that. Ended up flying home, going away again for about a week up north. And then training started again with Steve, quote unquote Steve. Not his real name, of course, but we ended up doing a bit more, working out a little bit more, doing the tour days, and then back in Milwaukee. I think it was a couple of weeks before training camp and getting ready to go again for my second NBA season. Now, this season was a better season for me. I started to feel a bit more comfortable, feeling better in my body. Much better season than my rookie year. 12.3 points and 8.8 rebounds a night in around 30 minutes. Just had glimpses of games, 20 and 15, and then, you'd have an 8 and 5 quiet night, and like just started to get a little bit better. My consistency was still a bit of a problem game to game. I'd have a stretch of 5 awesome games and then 3 shitty ones, and a young guy figuring it out, but the numbers weren't too shabby on a team that was still didn't know what we were as a team. It was still one of those teams where we were figuring out what our identity was. Michael Redd was our premier scorer. Mo Williams, they were trying to turn him more into a pass-first point guard. He was a scoring point guard, so there was some back and forth there. I believe that's the year we had Ruben Patterson, who had a really good year for us. Earl Boykins was there, myself, so on and so forth. But we ended up being not very good, 28 and 54 record. So not great. I remember we were around 500 for the first month or so, and then just plateaued, lost a lot of games. Terry Stotts was our head coach. He ends up getting fired. Now, the degrees of separation with this were interesting. Larry Krasowiak was our head assistant. He was just hired. He was my kind of individual shooting coach. I got along with him really well. And I probably gave Terry a bit of a hard time because I came into the NBA, as I said on the last episode, I thought Terry was really soft on a lot of our stars, but I didn't understand the landscape of the NBA where I have to be nice to my max player for the most part as a coach because my max player, he's going to get me fired. I didn't understand all the intricacies of that. So I just came in from college hard-headed, like, man, like if you're going to call out player 12, 13 on the roster, call out player 1 or player 2 or player 3. And I just felt like he didn't do that, which he didn't. But then once I'd been in the NBA a couple more years, I was like, oh, it's a bit hard on Terry because that's the political landscape of the NBA. Whether you like it or not, that's the reality. So I remember I get a call from the owner of the Milwaukee Bucks, and my agent had told me, look, they might move Terry Stotts. They're thinking about firing him, and they're thinking about promoting Larry Krasowiak as the interim coach and seeing how he goes. So I was like, yeah, I love Larry, and he was my guy that worked me out. He had a bit of a mean streak in him, which I thought it was exactly what we needed. Needed a guy that would cuss us out every now and then when we needed to be cussed out. But the kicker was the University of Utah called me and wanted a reference on Larry Krasowiak for their head coaching position right at the same time this was going on. So I was like, oh shit. So I called my agent, and then I ended up getting a call from Senator Cole, who was the owner, and he said, what's going on with Larry K? Do you like him? I said, yeah, I like him, and I'm just giving you a heads up. Like, Utah is probably going to sign him the next week or so, because they just called me for a reference and they want him to run their program down there, and that created a lot of leverage for Krasowiak, and then it ended up speeding up the firing of Terry Stotts because I know they were 1 foot in, 1 foot out in the organization. He ends up getting fired. Larry Krasowiak takes it over. for the next 20 odd games. Whenever an interim takes over on most teams I've been on or around or heard from teammates that have been involved in that process, it ends up being a breath of fresh air for a week or two. It's a new change. Guys are a bit more motivated. And we played like that with him. I don't know what our record was to finish that season under him, but it felt like we were in many more games. Guys were playing harder. And it was interesting because, you know, he had never coached in the NBA. He come from mainly college experience. He was a former NBA player, but no coaching experience. And I thought he did a pretty good job to finish that season. As I said, I had a decent sophomore year. I still remember doing it. I ended up spraining my foot late in the season with only, there would have been 15 to 20 games left, roughly speaking, right? I sprained my foot and I felt the sprain. And it really wasn't that bad. It felt like an ankle sprain, but one that no real swelling. I actually practiced on it the next day. Just said, I'm a little sore, and they said, we're going to get you a scan. So they get me a scan, and they say, you've got a foot sprain. We want you out for about 4 to 6 weeks, and then bring you back. And I'm like, well, there's only 4 to 6 weeks left of the season, so I feel fine to play. Like, let me play. And at this point, I had never missed an NBA game. Like, I never missed an NBA game my rookie year, believe it or not. And I remember myself and Charlie Bell used to have this is kind of funny looking back, considering what was ahead, but we had the Iron Man challenge, which was who could play the most games without missing any during, streak of Iron Man, essentially. How many games in a row can you play without missing it through injury or sickness? And it was me and Charlie Bell leading the team at that point. So, we end up getting those results, and I was kind of like, oh man, they must have my health in mind, my future health. That's really respectful. They're shutting me down, even though I said I can play. I practiced on it already. I'm fine. It's not bothering me enough to shut me down. Like, oh no, we're just going to shut you down. And once I look back on it and reflect on it, it was clear they were tapping me on the shoulder to say, look, we can't make the playoffs right now. There's no chance, even with a 20-game win streak. We want to rest you up for next season and make sure you're perfectly healthy and not going to risk injury, maybe further hurting your foot or another injury. And we want to make sure we don't win any more games or win the minimal. Like, we're at 20 games. If we go 5-15, that's a win for us because of the lottery pick. And that's when I really started to, I didn't realize that for a year or two. I was like, what the hell won't they let me play? I'm fine. I'm telling them I'm fine. I want to play for him. What's going on? And that's when I got a reality check into business of basketball, and they lined up their marbles to say, well, shoot, if he's out of the lineup and a few other guys, we can probably lose a bit more games and really get our draft stock higher, get a higher lottery pick. And that's the business of the game. Whether you like that or don't, but it just was, with me, used as a pawn in the mix, which it was kind of shocking to me because it was all about, I definitely could have finished that season on that foot sprain. So frustrating year yet again, like I said, and Larry K takes over as interim. They then sign him to another year for that following year. We'll talk about that in the next episode, but he then becomes the head coach. Most of the guys said, look, as an interim, he did a pretty good job. A few guys didn't love him, but they said, look, he did a better job than we thought. We'll give him another chance. And I was an advocate of his. I thought he did a good job with the hand he had dealt mid-season. And that's how Larry Krasovia got involved with the Milwaukee Bucks. But that's basically the season for me. Look, I missed one thing around the All-Star game. And I missed it last episode. I went to the All-Star game 2 years in a row in the Rookie Sophomore Challenge, which is now known as the World versus Young Stars or whatever they've rebranded it as. But my rookie year, I went to it, and I think it was in Houston, my rookie year, I believe, and played pretty well in it, had a really good game. I just could not stand the weekend, man. It was all about Hollywood, and, I can't even imagine what it's like today. It'd be even worse. But I'd much rather have had my 4 or 5 days off to rest and go somewhere warm and chill out rather than going to that. But I went and I experienced it. Just wasn't fond of it. They have you basically on a leash doing so many different things. No rest for the wicked. And this is your mid-season break for most guys, especially a guy in his rookie year. So I would have much preferred to just chill out. But I just realized all the shenanigans going on with that stuff was interesting. And look, there's a lot of money to be made as well. You can get a lot of appearances and signing, go do some public signings, some photo opportunities, and get paid a lot of money. A lot of guys that aren't even all-stars will go to an all-star weekend to hang around and get some deals through the NBA or through their club to do different kinds of things. That's what it's all about with all-star weekend. But I didn't enjoy it. Didn't enjoy it at all. I was like, man, like this is not kind of what I like. I was a top 3 rookie my rookie year, so I had to go and be part of it. So I went my sophomore year as well. That one was in Las Vegas, even bigger shit show. I believe there was a shooting there at the time, actual gun shooting, not basketball shooting, but there was all that going on. There was some gang violence around it. It was like every good, bad, and not so bad person around basketball was there. Just was not something that I liked, and there was just, I remember it was traffic jams everywhere because the All-Star weekend was there. It just wasn't enjoyable, and we had to go do all these events, and I played in that game, didn't play as well. Just was kind of like, I just want to get out of here. Ended up being a shooting competition between the guards. I think we had Monte Ellis and D. Will and Chris Paul versus whoever the sophomore team was, and it just ended up being a guard shootout of big just running down the court. I was like, nice. I'm not about these all-star type games. I don't play well in them for the most part because it's just not something I do. I'm not that flashy kind of type of guy. But that was just a note around the all-star weekend, and couldn't wait to get out of Vegas. And I will just claim that's why I didn't want to be an all-star ever again, and never got an all-star berth. I strategically, planned not to be. That's sarcasm. But yeah, those weekends weren't fun for me, and I much rather, of course I would have taken being an all-star in the future, and almost got that later on in my career and just missed out. But of course I would have taken that over a 5-day break. But the rookie sophomore game, probably not so much. It's the same as, I know Joe Ingles has been invited many times to the 3-point shootout, and he says no because he just wants 5 days with his family in the sun to chill out and kind of decompress and get ready for phase 2 of the season. And you don't blame some guys for that. So I know he's notorious for saying no to the NBA, and they get they get pretty pissed at him. Just to round this off the court, I was living in an apartment my rookie year / probably the first couple of months of my second year in the NBA. Ended up buying a house about 30-odd minutes from downtown. Man, this house, if I showed you this home, for most people living in Australia, at least in big cities, the best value for money I've ever bought anything for. It was $1 million on the nose. 5-bedroom home, brand new, with a basement, 3 levels, theater room. It had 3-car garage. It was on an 1.5 acres, a beautiful kind of slight hill, tree-lined backyard. $1 million, man. Like, you just like, and Milwaukee's a smaller city, kind of blue-collar city, so you don't have a lot of premium, super expensive homes there. But it's gone up now. But I just recently sold that, actually, but about 5-6 years ago. But yeah, that was kind of the home that I lived in while I was in Milwaukee, and I still remember that home, growing from a boy to a man in that home. Ended up buying 2 dogs, funnily enough. I bought 2 Siberian Huskies. Funny story around that. Bought one in Australia in that off season. And then when we got back to the US and moved into the house, we bought a second one. So we had one Aussie and one American Siberian Husky. And unfortunately they passed away all within a few months of each other in 2019, I believe it was, which kind of sucked. 2018, sorry, which wasn't great, but they had a very good life, and they got me through a lot of bad times when you're up and down mentally. So the dogs were great dogs, and it kind of made sense living in Milwaukee with the snow. But love that house. Living out in the boonies, the other thing I did was I got bored my second year in the NBA. And what does a young kid do with stupid amounts of money? I went and bought a 4-wheeler. I put a plow on it. Yes, a snow plow. And I plowed my driveway a few times until I realized how hard it was and how long it took with a 4-wheeler, and just started paying someone to do it. But that was good fun. I also bought a snowmobile of all things. So in Wisconsin, there's a bunch of the walking trails. Hopefully it's still like this and it hasn't gone too, unsafe to do so, OHS or PC, whatever you want to call it. But you could basically ride your snowmobile on all the walking trails around town, out of the city, obviously, and just go with your snowmobile with a bunch of other friends that have snowmobiles. So I was just going out by myself sometimes for 2 or 3 hours and just going for a cruise on a snowmobile. Like, had no idea how to ride them, never ridden one before. Ridden a motorbike, grew up on 4-wheelers, but just jumped on this thing, and that was good fun. So at least I ticked that box, and that's what I was doing with my spare time. The club had no idea that I was doing that. I guess they'll find out now, but I was just out and about. Never hurt myself doing it. Was a really good stress release, and just took my mind off whatever was going on. But I remember these trails were pretty cool though. Like in Wisconsin, which got a lot of people in trouble. There's actual trails that lead to diners and little bars and pubs and stuff along the way. So like the trail will point you towards a set of shops and you can stop there and have a drink. And problem was people were having too many drinks and ended up hitting trees and killing themselves or killing other people. So they've tailored that back a lot, but it was just a cool little culture there in Milwaukee. I really had a great time doing all that. And I just thought, why not get out and about in the community with something that they do? And that meant snowmobiling for the most part. So that is it for episode 9 of the My Journey series. I hope you appreciate this. I know I had a lot of people asking, when's your next My Journey? When's your next My Journey? I'm in the process of setting up a studio, which will take another couple of months, I assume. And once that gets set up, we'll be able to pump these out much more. But I appreciate all the support and everyone asking about these. They're fun to do, fun to relive. Some pretty quirky stories, some random shit that I just have in my noggin that I write down and talk about. And I hope you get some value out of them. But we will continue on to episode 10 next. So keep a lookout for that within the next month, 2 year. I'm not sure, decade hopefully, so I don't break my nuts too much. But it'll be out there pretty soon. And that will be about my 3rd year in the NBA, which comes with a whole bunch of new challenges. So thanks once again for joining me at Rogue Bogues on all your social media platforms, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. All good podcasts have good old Rogue Bogues, and we are now on YouTube as well. And by the way, I'm hoping to have video for this once our studio is set up, so you can look at my beautiful face while I'm talking shit about fireworks and all kinds of other dumb shit. So appreciate the support. Share this and give me some feedback if you like the episodes. Thanks.